and power, and then fulfill the purpose of living one.
Greetings.
The will to save his ego.
They're not all in yet. Hold on.
The love.
We're going to start this meeting with a couple of questions as we're waiting for any additional people to come in. Many of you know that Tulia is doing her wonderful 12 heartbeats, and we're more than happy to share time for that important project. So what I wanted to ask the group before we actually get into this is, how is this working for all of you? What would you like to see changed? Anything added to? So please don't be shy and feel free to share your thoughts. Okay. Rose, Michael, do either of you have any comments or suggestions? Any ways that we can make this better, easier to understand?
I need a little bit of time to think about it.
Okay.
Lisa.
Well, the only thing is, I'm really enjoying this, and I find it impactful. I can't say that's as much as I can come up with. I'm interested in how you choose the sounds behind your imagery, your dynamic imagery. And do you choose the music and the soundtracks to fit the imagery, as it moves through?
Yes, I would say. And most of the soundtracks in the background are more second ray. I use the work of Deva Premal, who has the most incredible Om. And yet there are other symbols that are a little bit more along the 1, 3, 5, 7 lines. So they're a little different. They're more masculine. So I don't know if I've done that correctly, but to the best of my ability. That's an excellent question, Nisa.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments about what we're doing and how it can be done better? One of the things that I think everyone should keep in mind is that some of this material is very abstract, and I hope the symbols and the images and the animations make it a little more user-friendly. But often it's to the advantage of the student to go back and review it in their leisure so that they can take these quotes and maybe even follow them to the source. What books were they taken out of? And see more context. And that's why I really appreciate this group, because you're getting a lot in a short amount of time. And I am no authority on any of these different subjects, but I have always new things to learn. Heidi?
So Duane, before we get to Heidi, Maureen says that it's great work, and Diana says, what I can share is that with the Spanish Healing Service Group, the animated images allow the group to penetrate places where words limit. In my particular case, they are inducing me to, quote, see and to, quote, feel a world of electrical energies. And so my comprehension is being expanded.
Well,
I would just like,
go ahead, Rose.
well, I would like to comment on that is
Yes.
that is kind of the whole goal of an image, and especially an animation, is to direct your mind along certain lines of thought that allow the intuition to then penetrate into these higher abstract levels where the lower mind cannot go. And then the information becomes more like direct knowledge. And that direct knowledge has a much more power than a theoretical knowledge. You read, okay, the seven rays are these colors. That's theory. But if you have that direct understanding through the penetration of the mind along these abstract lines that the images and the sounds help you get to, you're really entering into the real field of understanding. And that's actually what a direct quote from DK, where he says, the reason why I have written my books the way that I have is to direct your mind along certain lines for you to invoke the intuition. And I think, Duane, she is basically stating that that is what this webinar is about, series, and that's what's happening with her.
Excellent synopsis and insight onto this work. And before I put Heidi on with her question or comment, I just want to say that Diane, you also have got it. And there are a number of glamours that esoteric students have accrued over the years. And I'm glad to see many new arrivals are not affected by that. And one is feeling. And a lot of the Tibetans' works is about transmutating emotional energy into mental energy. And as Rose and others have said during these Zoom meetings, up into the intuition. But feeling is different than thinking about. And there are 7 subplanes to the astral plane or the emotional nature. And there are 7 subplanes to the Buddhic plane. And the question is, where is the crossover place? If you do not honor your emotions and learn to elevate and refine them, because that is where the transition goes from your human emotion in its highest feeling capacity into the love of Christ and God in the Buddhic plane. And if you think the Buddhic plane is just some place fraught with conflict, imbalance, you cannot fully understand the 4th ray, which is colored yellow, according to DK, until you are a 4th degree master. That is very advanced. Thank you. Heidi?
Thank you. And I don't know how much I can add to what's already been said, but I'm grateful for the words that have come forward. For me, the abstraction is absolutely necessary because it actually opens up that space into the higher mind, into the higher realms that is absolutely necessary in order then to use the mind to use the mind. And I'm going to use that word because I had a teacher that said you have to learn how to, the mind is a tool and you need to learn how to use it. And if you don't use it, the mind will use you. And so for me, part of it is learning how to do that abstraction, but then actually allow that the permutations to actually go all the way down into the embodied state, which is what you're talking about, but not and actually it moves through the emotional, it actually transforms the lower mind, and then it moves back up again. And it's in constant relationship in that expanded state and then down into the microcosm and then back up. And that is the gift of these beautiful animations, because it actually is showing the dynamism that actually is present in each breath that we're actually taking in and exhaling. And it's really how the universe works to me, and the gift of actually life as it's moving, and to apply it into our lives, into the environment, into everything that we're choosing, is how we participate in life. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Excellent. That's a wonderful summary. The idea of dynamism. And if one picture is worth 1,000 words, what then can we say about an animation that's made up of thousands of pictures seamlessly brought together? And one of the least understood aspects of the great cosmic fire written by DK is rotary motion, cyclic spiral motion, and progressive motion. Now, granted, it's very difficult in art or in animation to present those concepts because they relate to levels of consciousness. However, in my opinion, when you are able to watch something animated, assuming the proper context is given and the proper foundation, it can help create a bridge for the disciple to build or to slip, depending on how you look at it, into these abstract levels. These animations are no different than a stick figure. They're just more advanced and more sophisticated. And DK has affirmed, as our consciousness matures and we get to higher and higher levels, those symbols become more multidimensional and more ethereal. And that's not to say they're not more potent. They're just harder to grasp in their early stages because you're moving into movement, dynamism of energy in motion. And these are wonderful, wonderful statements and feedback. Thank you. Any additional comments?
I put my hand back up again, Duane, because I wanted to just, after you spoke, what was coming through really clearly, which has to do with this love of Christ and God, has to do with the continuum of life, the eternal life that is constantly being transformed through that. I don't even have a word for it, but through the essence of those teachings that were given, and how they're playing out on the planet now is very interesting, because they're playing out through distortions rather than the original teachings that were given that actually went through those planes that you're talking about, the 7 astral planes, the 7 Buddhic planes, and then into that plane of vibrant love that is constantly flowing between all of those planes. And actually nothing in life is separate from them. And yeah, that's all I want to say. Nothing in life is separate from them.
Excellent. I love that. Vibrant love interpenetrating all the planes, the rays, the bodies, the sheaths, the chakra system. And in Alice Bailey's book on the atom, she points out right from the start that even the tiny atom has imbued at its very center the quality of love. And all that is required is to cyclically unfold that atom as it becomes and passes through the mineral kingdom, the animal kingdom, the vegetable kingdom, the animal kingdom, the human kingdom. The atoms have similarity. They simply expand their rings past naught, their vibrancy, their potency, and their brilliance and quality of color. So everything starts in this solar system anyway with that spark of unconditional love. Okay, I think we should sort of jump in here, and I appreciate everyone taking time to participate, and with special appreciation for Mikey, BL, and Rose, and others who make this not only spiritually possible, but technically. Without their assistance, I would not be huffing and puffing on this Zoom meeting. I would be passively watching something else. So thank you all. So just to slightly recapitulate from our last presentation, trying to find my mouse, it seems to have disappeared. Oh, this is the first. Okay, well, let's try it this way. No, not going to advance fast forward. So I have a problem with my mouse. It will not advance my slides forward.
Duane, try using the enter key or the arrow buttons on the keyboard.
The enter key on the keyboard. And where is that located? Okay, I see it. Okay, it changed for me. Did it change for all of you?
Yes.
Isn't that interesting? I've learned something new. Wasn't I just praising all these techie geniuses? We tested this, it all worked fine. Okay, I just wanted to mention, because we went into quite a bit of depth about the solar activity at this particular time. We're in a solar maximum, and it's not quite as potent here on the 9th as it was at our last meeting, but according to NASA, it's moderate to intense. So it's pretty close. The superhuman physics, we did a video, and it simply indicated how certain advanced scientific types are tapping into the etheric, and with the intent of moving the planet away from its ecological imbalance and disasters with all the pollution and different things. And so we're pretty much going to start here with sacred geometry. And we will start from there. Okay. DK, in his marvelous works, outlines 4 different stages. And he actually goes into quite a bit of detail that I'm going to share with all of you today. And this is the sequence you can see numbered 1 through 4 in a generic way, understanding that these different stages overlap, often interpenetrate, and often fuse. The greater always ensouls the lesser. It's just the lesser may not be aware of the greater. So at the top at number 1, we have an inchoate mass of diffused and swirling colors. That's sort of where the mass of humanity is. And it indicates it needs to coordinate by the recognition of its personality ray, these 3 lower vehicles: purifying the physical, stabilizing the emotions, and beginning to think creatively rather than with what DK and HPB call karma manas. It's the lowest aspect of thinking the mind with the astral body, the lowest subplanes. Okay, next one below that, number 2. This is where personality takes place. It's colored green because it's mainly a third ray activity. However, it is influenced by the soul, which is not fully recognized, but it's beginning to exert its influence over these 3 lower diffused and swirling bodies that we just outlined. So you have this swirling inchoate mass replaced by a grid of squares. And that creates a certain integration and power that the person did not demonstrate in earlier incarnations. When these 3 areas are worked on, purification of the body, the etheric, the astral, and the lower mental, then that is demonstrated by the soul becoming aware through the personality. The soul is always aware of itself on its own plane. So you might say when the personality is integrated, you have the potential to start on the path of return. However, you may not know that. It may not be verbalized, and you may not sort of pin it down occultly as we are here. Soul awareness, we've learned if you take a square and you pass a diagonal line across it, you end up with 2 triangles. When those 2 triangles are brought together in a certain way, you have what is called the star of life, which we're going to go into in great detail and have a little in the past. And then last but not least, you have monadic fusion, which is a series of spherical circles, the greater circle ensouling all the lesser circles. Because these 3 earlier stages, 3, 2, and 1, they are also circles. They so the monad is now in direct touch. It works through the soul at first, but eventually it bypasses the soul itself and works directly with the personality. Okay, so let's recapitulate what we just outlined on a slightly more expanded level. Now, these loose grid of squares are vulnerable to the entry of negative and undesirable forces if your aura is only made up of that type of grid. When you're having a download of negative energy, how do you determine if it's coming from something within you or it's coming from world conditions? It is not. And often we criticize ourselves for things that really we did not always self-generate, that are coming from outside of us, other people, other negative groups, and just the general condition of world affairs with wars and famines and all the horrible things that are taking place right now historically. So you can subdivide a square into 2 triangles, but then you can subdivide it into 4 triangles and you have doubled and tripled the potency. Negative energy is rebounded and it is pushed away by this grid. This grid you can find in the physical etheric, you can find it on the astral plane, you can find it on the mental plane, and you can even find it on the higher levels. So perfect health and integration on a planetary level or an individual level is the result of uniformity and strength of the entire different bodies. And when you are undergoing initiation, you are entering into a very important place in your development, because not only have you helped yourself, but now your service capacity is greatly expanded. Now you can help others because your energies are positive and they're outgoing. Doesn't mean that you're Mr. or Mrs. Perfect, but you have become a server with great power. And now, most importantly, you can begin to work on the planetary grid. Now, some will argue when you achieve what I just mentioned earlier, you're already automatically improving the quality of life in its totality and on the entire planet. This is true. However, now you can say scientifically that you see the stages. And this is important for visualization, because visualization is the keynote of all progress on the path. And you have to know when to give up one type of visualization for a more important, a more advanced one. Even, and I'm choosing my words with care here, if it invokes or involves a little bit of unfamiliarity or discomfort. Not bad, just different. And then, of course, to the far right, you have this tight grid of triangles. And this is a grid or of an electric field with over 9,000 points and 30,000 links in its triangular mesh. Well, this is where the masters are. This is where the Chohans, they're not only very expanded rings past naught, and I don't do it justice, obviously, but this type of geometry is impervious to any outside forces that are negative and can only be destroyed by the light within. Because we know change is constant, and even the masters undergo change, but it's because of a welling up of light that disintegrates or dissipates these higher sheaths they work through so that they can embrace or download the next level. Okay, so let's go to the next quote. And this is one of my favorite. DK says, you want to understand cosmic fire, you have to understand the stanzas of Deanne. And this is sort of cryptic, but at the same time, it supports and summarizes what I just said in a far more occult and poetic way. He's talking about these lotus lords of what he calls deep, unseeing sleep. They dream, and as their dreams take form, the worlds speed on. How many times have you or your friends or people around you said, you shake your head and say, this is really just a dream? Like you can't take it for real. Now, this is a different type of dream. It's where they're into what is called a nirvanic sleep. They're sleeping to all that happens on the material planes. And as they dream, the worlds speed on. Anyway, the great and cruel Maya of the planes of sweet illusion come into being and draw into its snare the points of unconnected light and dims their luster. If you're not building in your triangles, you're not building in your spheres, you're not transmutating your squares, you will be drawn into the snare of unconnected light, which is involutionary and elemental in nature, and it will dim your luster. Remember always that you are a blazing sun and that Your environment is so important because it can be easily compromised, even when we're doing things with good intentions. Okay,
Duane,
we're gonna, yes, this is a
I'm
good time for any questions because we're starting a slightly different section. So
okay.
please, any questions or comments?
First off, we have a couple of comments in here. I think Diana's uh, Diana said what, and I think this may have been read. What I can share is that with the Spanish Healing Service group, the animated images allow the group to penetrate places where words limit. In my particular case, they're inducing me to see and feel a world of electrical energies, and so my comprehension is being expanded.
Excellent. She
Then,
shared a go ahead.
oh, okay, I'm sorry.
No,
You
no,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, I want to hear the
I
whole.
wanted to read the next one.
Okay, please do.
Ben said the 12 heartbeats of peace just ended. There's an overlap. We know that. And so as of next month, we're going to start this webinar, Duane's webinar at 6:30 p.m. GMT to make it easier for the transition for those who do both of that. And Veronica asks, what color is the Buddhic plane after the fourth initiation?
The Buddhic plane is basically the color golden yellow. However, there are 7 subplanes, and each one of those subplanes has its own unique color, but in a diminished form. So if you take the 7 rays, and I have many charts throughout all my work that show this, and I can't do it now, but if you take the highest subplanes of the Buddhic, it's going to be yellow tinged with red, ray 1. Second subplane, it's going to be, yellow tinged with red. Then it's going to be second subplane, yellow tinged with blue, which is the second ray. And then third ray green, fourth ray yellow, and then all the way down. That's an excellent question. The higher you penetrate these rays, because these rays have 7 subplanes, the more luminous, the more potent, the more all-inclusive, but their colors and their hues become so translucent and transparent, it's very hard to ascertain what they look like until you arrive. Thank you.
Okay, and the next, Anna says, motion on the plane of mind is the way consciousness evolves, building forms, outgrowing them, and then building afresh. And at certain critical points, passing from one kingdom to another.
Excellent. And that is a perfect example of what I was sharing a little earlier, however inadequately, about cosmic fire. It's a motion equals change. It equals life. Anything that's static has the potential for change, but until it begins to move forward, it can be stuck on some lower elemental life. Thank you, Anna. That was beautiful.
Okay, let me see. I don't understand the context of this, and it might be because I was doing something else, but Susie says chain mail of spirit.
Yes,
I
I was
think,
referring to the grids, and the tighter they got, it was just a comparison. They reminded me of the chainmail that the knights of old used to weave together to protect themselves. And the tighter it gets, with the
Excellent.
more. Yeah, thank you.
That's a great analogy because we are being assailed constantly by what Shakespeare would say or call sharp barbs. And if you can build in this mail, this integrated grid of light, it is identical to the sacred warrior. Note I'm using that word to beat back the forces of evil that are always trying to trip the disciple up or to penetrate through their built-in auric field of protection. And they cannot do it if your auric field is strong enough. So thank you. That's a beautiful analogy. The mail of a warrior, chainmail, protective gear. Any additional comments or questions?
No, not at this time, but I'm going to share my screen now. And okay, let me see. I want to share the whole thing. I hope I'm doing this right. There, entire screen. You're sharing your entire screen. Well, good for me.
Excellent.
Okay, can you guys all see this?
I had asked BL to give us a little astrological rundown of what's taking place at this period, and she has generously offered to take a little bit of time and do that. So thank you, BL.
Sorry, I didn't have a lot of preparation.
Oh,
And I
no.
never think well on my feet, but I took 30 minutes or whatever, and I looked at a number of things. First off, what we're seeing here is Donald Trump's chart, natal chart here in the middle, and Kamala Harris's chart in the outer ring. And it's really interesting that they both have strong Gemini Sagittarius. Now, these are Donald Trump's houses. So it's in the 10th house and the 4th house. So it's basically the domestic home or ashramic roots and the career goals or ashramic goals. Okay. What we see here is both of their nodes, both of their north nodes are here in Gemini. Okay. The north node is the future direction that you're going. The south node here in the family, the domestic home, or the ashramic home is the south node. So both of them have that strong Sagittarius in with their south nodes, which means that Sagittarian influence they each brought with them into this lifetime. It's also Donald Trump's, he was apparently born at a full moon. It's his Earth and moon combination. So again, that's a past, the moon is the past patterns that we bring with us. The earth is our dharma that we're working on. And look at this in Kamala Harris's, it's her descendant. So it's on her descendant here. And it's her part of fortune. And her part of fortune is that is the best harmony achieved between the goals of the ascendant, the conquering of the personality sun, and getting rid of those past patterns of the moon that inhibit us. Okay. So it's this cross, this mutable cross that they have with their, oops, sorry, it's not a mutable cross, is it? These are the mutable, and these are the fixed. Okay. All right. So there's a lot going on here in the 4th and 10th house axis in the Sagittarius Gemini. And I want to point out that with the USA chart, the Sibley chart, which is one of the most popular for the USA, the ascendant is that Sagittarian that they both have a very strong presence in. Okay. Then Donald Trump, his Mars, his little personal action figure, is in his 12th house, but it's right there close to his ascendant. So that's hidden potential, hidden agenda, hidden warrior. Anything that starts with hidden could be brought in with this in his little personal um, uh, ascendant there, the 29th degree, 2952, very, very, very late in Leo. In other words, hoping that he can learn the lesson of the Leo, which we all know is front and center in our face, right? So that's what we see there. And then on his descendant, the house of the other, well, actually, this is in his sixth house. His part of fortune, remember again, it's the best harmony achieved of the ascendant sun and moon. His part of fortune is, well, let me rephrase it. Her Saturn, it's an opportunity, but it's also a challenge, is dead on his part of fortune. See that? And it's moving retrograde, so it's getting even close. Well, no, she was born and that was it. But anyway, the point is her Saturn, the challenger, is smack on his, and that's in Aquarius. Okay, so she's challenging his humanitarianism, right? And it's strong through the way they communicate, and it's strong through that I see the goal, I reach that goal, and then I see another, that both of them share this very strong axis. Okay, so that's the two of their charts bumped up to each other. I'm sure there's a lot more in there, but
Excellent.
those are in your face stuff. So let's move on a little bit here. This is Kamala Harris's chart in the middle here, bumped up against the US Sibley chart, which is the outer wheel. Okay, so here's the ascendant at 12 Sagittarius for the US Sibley chart, and that by sign coincides in her sixth house and her seventh house with her south node. So she's been working on this Sagittarian goal for a while, past lives. And again, that harmony that she has to achieve between her sun, moon, and ascendant. It looks like she was also born at a full moon. Wait a minute. Was she the one with the full moon, or was this is Donald Trump's
Donald.
chart? Both of them. Both of them were born at full moons. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Hers was an Aryan full moon, and his was it was a Libra. The sun was in Libra at the time. But so, okay, all right, something I missed the first time around. But hey, and with the US Sibley chart, the US moon in Aquarius is smack dab again on that Saturn of hers, which remember we just saw flat out there on his part of fortune. So there's lots of connections here, lots of challenges. This is the past of the US, but it's in Aquarius, right? Which and for her it's an opportunity, a spiritual opportunity, and it's in the ninth house for transformation of that Sibley moon in past patterns. Um, let me see, we looked at this, right? The ascendant and all of that. So I didn't really see what I'm looking for when I do this is I'm looking for tight connections between the outer wheel and the inner wheel. And they have to be pretty tight connections. I usually only use 1 degree orb. I usually try and keep it to the same degree, but we look for patterns as well. So we're looking, like I said, the Sagittarian influence here. Let me see what else we've got. Well, let's look at, here is Kamala Harris, and the outer wheel is the transits on the evening. I used 11 p.m. PST because that was about the time they started calling some of the critical stuff. So the outer wheel is the transits. The inner two wheels are the progressions from her chart. Okay, so what we see is a strong, her vertex, which is her most fated point in her 5th house, is at 14 Scorpio. And the sun on this particular day was dead on at 14 Scorpio. So the sun in the heavens on this election day smacked up against her vertex. Her solar arc Uranus is a little off, it's at 13, but this is, of course, the unexpected. All right. So this was a fated election and a fated outcome. Okay. See, she's got a heck of a lot more of this Sagittarius going on here. By solar arc, now her sun and her Vulcan have moved in. The transiting vertex, well, this was at 11 o'clock, so that's kind of, I mean, that was an arbitrary number, but Venus, right human relations, was moving up there, but it wasn't quite there yet, was it? See, here's her part of fortune at 24, and this is just at 23. It didn't quite make it there, but she had that strong, strong showing in the Sagittarius with this goal that she was working on. Okay. Now, here's Donald Trump in the US Sibley chart. His Mars, his little action figure, this can't be right. This can't be right. It can't be the same Sibley chart I used for her. Because with this, let me just do this. See, this is what this should be. Okay. View a biwheel with Donald Trump and then Sibley chart. Oh, okay. Stupid BL. I told you I don't think well on my feet. Let me go back to.
This is excellent, BL. You've given us a lot of insight into the election results and where each party was located.
Okay. So these are, of course, his. So again, we saw this, we knew that. Here is the transiting Saturn at 14 directly on his Chiron in Libra. Okay. Now, Chiron is that, it's the wounded healer. And it's an opportunity. Okay. Opportunity for that wounded healer. Okay. I mean, his things went way up when he was tried to be assassinated, right? It's also supposed to be the sage and the guru, and that's definitely the opportunity that the world sees him, well, that the majority of Americans see him as. Okay. So it's interesting that this is here. They see him as balanced in Libra. Okay. Here is the transiting moon, again, on that part of fortune for him, the past moving up, giving him the opportunity to work with the harmony of his ascendant sun and moon, for the past patterns of the US, whatever that's going to be. It's in Aquarius. So hopefully it's that open-minded humanitarianism that the Sibley chart started with. All right, here is the transiting sun directly on his natal sun. I'm sorry, transiting Mars directly on his natal sun. So the little action figure, again, the message that he portrayed to the world, the, you know, that's the communication from Gemini, matched up with what they wanted in their warrior leader. Okay, this is in his 10th house. So that's his house of career goals. He's back. And here is his natal Saturn up against Mercury in the 11th house, in the Aquarian house, the messenger again in Cancer this time, up against his Saturn. So this is, well, actually, it's sandwiched in between his Saturn and his Venus. Right human relations, compassion, opportunity, compassion, challenge. And Mercury is the messenger. So I think these two things here kind of say the same thing in their own way. So, all right. And then I have one more. This is Donald Trump and the quad wheel. So outer wheel are the transits. The inner two wheels are the progressions. So what we see here is that transiting Uranus in Taurus was smack dab on his midheaven, right there on his career goals. Okay, the highest point in his chart right here. And by all accounts, it could have been considered an upset. It could be considered an electrical charging for the world. Here's the transiting sun on his progressed ascendant in Scorpio. So this is his third house of personal integration. All right. Here is the Venus, right human relations, connected to Neptune, compassion, also delusion. And it's right here with his full moon and Earth in his natal chart. So will he go with the right human relations? Will he go with some of the delusions that he has? Or will he bring that compassion out in this Sagittarian work that he's doing? Here again, what do we find? We find progressed Uranus right there on his natal sun. I mean, they were close to begin with. They were considered within orb, but the sun is at 22, Uranus is at 21. So that's confirming the connection here. And then what we have transiting is the events part of fortune. Again, that's arbitrary because of the time I picked at 11 p.m. Eastern time, but that's his harmony of his ascendant sun and moon. And then Jupiter was hovering there as well. That big expansion, that big message in Gemini that got there. Okay, that's what I've got. If you guys would
Excellent.
like to look closer at any of these charts, I will post them with Duane's slides himself. But
Excellent.
does anybody have any comments or questions they would like to?
That was excellent, BL. We appreciate you taking the time to outline. Now, the question I have is when BL removes her share, Michael, am I going to have to reboot or will I be there?
You're going to have to reshare your screen.
Are you there, Rose?
Yes, I am. I am not
My,
sure
my
to
mouse
the answer.
doesn't work. My mouse doesn't work. It just
I
stopped
believe
working.
your mouse does work. It's just probably lost on the other screen. So you probably need to take your mouse and move it to, you're going to need to try to move it to the
Share. Okay, I
left.
got it. It's working. I got the share to work.
Got it.
Now, the question is, we have 6 screens facing us. Is it screen 1, screen 2, Moya, PowerPoint presentation, PowerPoint slideshow, Moya?
It is the one that looks identical to screen 2, but it will say in front of it, I believe, PowerPoint.
It'll say PowerPoint. Okay.
And it looks identical to screen number 2.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. I
Okay.
think you were maybe one slide, you were on the, I think you were one slide the other direction because you were showing the pyramid with the little dots.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you so much, BL. Now, the next part of this presentation is on the Tetractes. And just to give a definition, this is Greek. The Tetractes or tetrad, or the Tetractes of the decade, is a triangular figure consisting of 10 points arranged in 4 rows, 1, 2, 3, and 4 points in each row. In terms of the Pythagorean Tetractes, reaching from unity through duality to trinity in quaternary. So you can see the top of the pyramid at the apex is like ray 1, drop down to ray 2, second tier, ray 3, third tier, and the bottom would be ray 4, 5, 6, and 7. So they're all combined in this figure called the Tetracty. And we're going to explore that in more detail. This is a quote from I think it's Blavatsky, where she's saying, he, a master, and I can accept you, but until your higher ego, with the light of the higher self on it does, accepts you, the first triangle will never become a complete Tetractes. So in other words, the Tetractes, the image that I just showed you, is made up of many triangles. And when HPB says the first triangle will never become a complete Tetracty until you do all these different stages, I think she may be referring here to what DK calls in one of the Dina books, the first esoteric triangle of energy which the disciple creates. And interestingly enough, it relates to the heart center, the 12-petal lotus in the highest head center, and the ajna center. This is in reality more in the nature of a funnel of reception than a triangle. So what you see here, and we've presented this, and we're not going to dwell on this very long because everyone here is familiar with this chart. You will find the first Tetracty in this, but this also goes beyond that. It creates all of those Tetractes, all of the 10 Tetractes, all of the relationships to full-blown liberation at the 5th initiation. So when DK says, and this is important to any additional or new participants, because unless you know, well, let's put it in DK's words, the single most important thing you can do in your development is to know where you are situated on the spiritual path. From that knowledge, you can initiate scientifically the next step ahead. Every one of these triangles that you see on the left, DK gives somewhere in his books, not always in the same place, a specific triangle that you have to work on. And I've simply added what initiations that takes place, and the ray coloring, the Deva or angelic kingdoms, you will be working when you do this work. This is not complete, but it's a generic outline that's very useful. Okay, so here we see another picture of the Tetracty that probably existed before the Pythagorean influence or school, but he's often accredited with this and others. And if you look at this, you'll notice that if you look at the dotted broken line, you'll see a dual tetrahedron. So if I simply position this in a slightly different way, we see what DK has called, and we have shared and studied, the star of life. That when you're working with triangles, as we earlier outlined, and you're tightening those triangles by passing a diagonal line back and forth, you end up with this star configuration made from two tetrahedrons, and that we call the dual tetrahedron. Now, I mention this because it's not just on the lower levels that we find divine geometry manifesting. It actually goes up to extremely high levels. They can exist on soul levels, on monadic levels. Would anyone in the group like to read this quote by DK taken from a treatise on cosmic fire?
Go ahead, Michael.
At the culmination of life experience, and when man has reached his goal, each triangle is a radiant path of fire, and each center a wheel of living fiery force, rotating at terrific speed. The center at this stage not only rotates in a specific direction, but literally turns upon itself, forming a living, flaming, iridescent globe of pure fire, and holding within it a certain geometrical shape, yet withal vibrating so rapidly that the eye can scarcely follow it. Above all, at the top of the head, be seen a fiery display that seems to put all the other centers into insignificance. From the heart of this many-petaled lotus issues a flame of fire with the basic hue of a man's ray. This flame mounts upward and seems to attract downward a sheet of electric light, which is the downflow from the spirit on the highest plane. This marks the blending of the fires and the deliverance of man from the trammels of matter.
Excellent. And we're going to watch a very short video that however inadequately, will give the viewer a sense of this dual vortex where energy pours in at the top, circulates, and then comes back around and comes back up through the center. And when you study the chakra system, and particularly the Kundalini fire, you have this constant circulation of the lower fires, the material fires, up through the central Shushumna channel, and that's where they become purified. And when we do this work, we don't overly focus on the lower chakras, but we do bring the lower energies of the chakras up where they're transmutated through the heart, the throat, the ajna center, and all of the other higher centers. So use this next video as a short meditation and get that feeling within your own system of constant movement.
Bargo devasya limai Yuna prachodaya Bhuvasva Tatsaviturvareniyam Bargo devasya limai Yuna prachodaya Om Bhuvasva Tatsaviturvareniyam Bargo devasya limai Yuna prachodaya Om Bhuvasva Tatsaviturvareniyam Bargo devasya limai Yuna prachodaya Om Bhuvasva Tatsaviturvareniyam Bargo devasya limai Yuna prachodaya Tatsaviturvareniyam Bargo devasya limai Yuna prachodaya Om Bhuvasva Tatsaviturvareniyam Bargo devasya limai Yuna prachodaya Om Bhuvasva Tatsaviturvareniyam Bargo devasya limai Yuna prachodaya Om Bhuvasva Tatsaviturvareniyam Bargo devasya limai Yuna.
The idea of feeling the movement of energy within your different vehicles is very important, and the feedback that everyone has shared indicates that this group gets it. There's lesser movements and there's greater movements. And all the triangle work is the ability to clear away the obstructing low gray matter between the highest and the lowest. Because once these triangles are properly formed and the energy circulated and the purification takes place, then what's left, and this is particularly important at the third initiation, is the Kundalini will rise of its own volition, not a question of willing it or wanting it to happen or even focusing on it. It will, by its own nature, seek its consort, which is Shiva. Shakti, the great mother power, will seek its divine consort. And then at the third initiation, this is where liberation or begins and then ends, of course, in the higher initiations. But we always have to keep in mind that this is a dual process. Our ability to work on our lower bodies is the first half, that the soul on its own plane is attempting to contact us at all times, short of if we've severed the ties, and that only happens in extreme cases between the personality vehicles and the soul on its own plane. So don't feel like you have to do all this on your own. No, the soul is doing its part in conjunction with you, but it will not do its part unless it sees intention and effort on your part. So now what we have here, to go back to the dual tetrahedron and the star of life, is the same theme on a group level. In other words, you can be a disciple in the very center of this, and you can see the light blue tetrahedron, but you are connected to many, many other evolving tetrahedrons. They may be a slightly different color. They may be not fully formed as yours. Maybe they're more advanced formed, but you're creating this interlocking grid, as I tried to show earlier, with the idea of dividing the square into, with a diagonal line, two triangles, and then further dividing it, and you can really divide it infinitely. So what we're going to see a little later, this is on a flat plane, but a little later we're going to see this type of image in motion. But it's important to get a foundational base through the lower mind of how things connect together, and we're building spherically, we're building holographically, we're building like fractals that keep repeating themselves. They're self-generating. Now that's a very difficult word in the occult pantheon of fancy occult words, but it's one of DK's. Self-generating. It's emerging from the inner planes outwardly, and what we're looking at is the outer symbols of inner lives that are in constant motion.
Okay, Duane,
Yes.
you have a hand up?
Okay, we'll take one question now, and then I'll do a few more slides, and then we'll open it up. But go ahead with
Okay,
this question.
because there are comments, but okay, go ahead, please, Joe.
I just want to say that yesterday, when I was meditating, I got a picture of a yo-yo, and I thought, what on earth is that? And so I Googled it and I asked, what are the mechanics of a yo-yo? And I found that there is a rotary motion and there is a vertical up and down motion. I think for myself right now, this may be the metaphor for what we're looking at when we see the material that you've just shared, Duane.
Excellent. That's a wonderful thing. And we are yo-yos, and not by the common definition, but esoterically, we are spinning in space and we're doing this balancing act, and we're on somebody's string. We're on the Antakrana bridge, and we may not fully see the hand that's moving all the parts, but it's there and it has our well-being and safety in hand. Thank you, Joe. You know, in the New Age, you have what is called the flower of life geometry, and it's a geometric pattern composed of overlapping circles which create 6 points, and it's considered a sacred symbol representing the interconnectedness of all life. It's the blueprint of creation. It's one of the fundamental patterns found throughout the universe, from atoms, planets, signifying that everything and all life originate from a single source. The star of life is almost identical. In other words, if you look at this picture, and this is beautifully ensoling our planetary life, the Earth, that they're like little flowers, but they have 6 appendages. Star of Life has 6 sharp pointed appendages, and you could superimpose the previous one I showed you right over this if you simply curved it around and placed it correctly. So this idea of sacred geometry has separate, or it has several levels, let's put it that way. And this idea of the flower of life, which is so prominent in the New Age, is really onto something. And what we're really doing here, in a sense, is merely expanding it with what I think is a little deeper interpretation. But I'll leave that up for all of you to decide. Okay, now we're moving into a different section. So if there's any comments or questions, this would be a good time to do it.
Okay, we have several. Susie says, beautiful visualization reminiscent of the newly emerging butterfly pumping solar energy into the central energy channel.
Excellent. The butterfly with its dual wings. Yes, thank you. That's excellent. Any additional comments?
Yes, we got a couple. Diana says, every day there is a misalignment between the energy that runs through our central channel and that which comes from the soul. But when we pay attention to the soul that we are and do not betray our nature, we can perceive color, sound, and movement circulating through our etheric column. There is a perfect alignment. There is health. She says, am I making this up?
Absolutely not. It's a great thing when someone can train their mind to understand these esoteric traditions, but it's equally, and in some cases, it may be more valuable to have what is called a high sensitivity to these teachings. And DK has affirmed that HPB and Alice Bailey were 2 of the highest quality psychics to impact the planet. So they not only have shared these huge expanded cosmologies, but they had the psychic sensitivity. And it is said of Alice Bailey, even though she had a lot of first ray, she had so much heart energy. When anybody sat down in her presence or talked to her privately, she was funny, she was engaging, and she just had a level of psychic sensitivity that went right through you. And this is not unique, what you have just shared, Diana. And yes, there is a lower correspondence on a psychic level that is full of glamour and all kinds of claim making that really is sad. but you all know the difference, because psychic sensitivity is there to expose the truth, to understand not only yourself and all of your different components, but the people you contact. A good psychic can walk into a room and they can just feel the energy. And yes, they have to have a keen intellect. This is why DK says you have to distinguish between low psychism, clairvoyance, clairaudience, and mental psychism and clairvoyance and clairaudience. And they may seem to contradict. Mental? No, that means, and Michael and I used to talk about this a lot, when the higher mind and the heart fuse, you can think in the light of love. And what comes from you is always imbued with the quality of love. And this is what awakens people. It's not reams of minutia. It's not endless instructions. It's the ability to speak with fire, to awaken the atom within another person's body, emotion, mind, and help build that bridge. Okay, excellent. Any additional comments?
Yeah, we've got a couple. Francis says the triangle work reminds of the saying that the universe is a series of descending triangles and rising triangles.
Yeah, that is so beautiful. Isn't it amazing how an occult truth can be so poetic? That is excellent. Thank you, Francis. Okay, one more and then we're going to continue.
Okay, we only have two more, but anyway, Diana says, does sacred geometry express another quality in the world of formlessness, even if it is a paradox? Maybe so.
Well, we have to be careful when we define something as being form or formless. And the reason for that is because we have to remember that everything that we can aspire to, all 9 initiations, we're talking the full Monty here, is still confined within the cosmic physical plane. Yes, at the 6th initiation, you can exit out and you're contacting other energies that obviously are beyond the cosmic physical, but it's still considered the physical. When I say to you at the 3rd initiation, you're going to contact the Buddhic, the Atmic, and high monastic energy, those are not formless levels. They're formless compared to what's below them in the hierarchy of things, but they're so refined, the neophyte or the aspirant flippantly says they're all formless. No, they're not formless. They're a type of form that is so advanced, we don't have the apparatus of response to fully understand them. So to go back to what you're saying, Diana, geometry goes right up through all levels. It just becomes more refined. And the geometry never impedes the life that it's veiling. So until you're at the cosmic atmic plane, I guess we can't talk too much about the formless, but that was excellent. Okay, one more, and then we're going to continue.
Okay, Susie says, could the flower of life be a further step in the evolving grid due to circle formation as in monadic?
Yes, I think that's a good analogy. And yet others have indicated that when a triangle has sharp points, that usually has masculine connotations. And obviously, I'm not talking about gender here. When something is circular, it's more free flowing And yes, it does relate to the monadic plane, but it also on another level relates to the divine feminine. You see, the flower of life is the superimposition of circles to make the six-pointed flower. And what I've shown you is more like a grid. So I have to regress slightly because that's a very good point. And it depends on what level you're operating on. I hope that has some help. Okay, now we're going to take the tetrahedron, the dual tetrahedron, the star of life that we've sort of have explored more macrocosmically down to more of a microcosmic level. And by looking at this chart, which we've presented many times, you see two triangles, the upper one, which is the monadic expression, and the lower one, which is the personality expression. Now, the soul in between has been covered so extensively through the Moria University. I try to reference it, but I try to bring in what is going to happen as one approaches the third initiation and afterwards. And that is that the integrated personality that's fused with the soul projects its light up to the monad. And when that contact is made, the soul that has been the guide in the intermediary of all this work, it leaves. Now, we can say it's destroyed. We can say it goes back to the heart of the sun. We can say it goes back to the Venusian scheme from which it was borrowed for our evolutionary growth. And they may all be accurate. But the point is the soul fades out as an intermediary, and these two triangles descend on each other. And this is what you would see. A, the father, U, the son, M, the mother. And I'm going to show you some graphic animation by the esotericist Justin Wilkinson, who's a master of animation and graphics. So just keep in mind that the three lowest aspects of the personality, the matter aspect, pass up through the soul, and then eventually link with the three aspects of the monadic triad. TK states that the higher you go in the hierarchy of energies and forces, the simpler it becomes. Now, that quote and that concept often flies in the face of the lower mind, which thinks, and I have been a victim of this, so I can speak with some authority, that they become more powerful because these energies become more simple. Don't imagine that they're not more powerful, because they are. So what you're looking at here is the same star of life, the same dual tetrahedron, and you can also add to this, if you configured it slightly differently with the lines of force, the flower of life. They're all ensouled in this one image, which is more sort of fourth dimensional. The seamlessness of it and how it's self-propelling. Any comments about that animation or the two animations?
Asha says, Duane, what is the crystalline light body, please? And does it fit here at all?
The crystalline light body, that's a good question. And I'd be interested in what others think. A crystal is something that can receive energy and it can magnify it far more than what it received, and it can be sent out. There was a gentleman in the Bay Area here, San Francisco, who did very advanced work. I can't quite remember his name, but he said if you take a crystal and if you polish it or you grind it at a certain angle, it will determine the type of energy it receives and sends out. So when you get into the ageless wisdom, you hear the diamond-hearted, lots of references to diamonds because of its power, its rarity, its purity, its strength. But if anyone else would like to share something, Heidi, go ahead.
I was just going to add that what was present for me was in that last animation was the vibratory energy was very clear under my feet and above my head. So the energies were, there was a repetition of the awareness of it. It was very easy for me to hold that image because it was already there. I didn't have to create it. It was already present in the energy field. And it was felt, a felt sense under the feet as well as above the head. And they were holding a kind of a steadiness between them that was really kind of effortless. It was really lovely to feel that and have that experience. So I just wanted to say that and thank you. And that to me goes with the understanding of the crystalline vibration of the ability to transmit, to receive and transmit energy within cellular structures. I'll just say it like that. Thank you.
Excellent. I think it might relate to the two types of healing, the magnetic and radiatory. And if I remember correctly, in magnetic healing, you learn techniques to manipulate Davic and elemental force through triangles and through visualization, and it's very powerful. But when you have evolved and you have matured in that work, you reach what is called the radiatory level, where all of your triangles, relatively speaking, because it depends on your ray makeup, but when the majority of your centers are open, you feel just like you're talking about, Heidi. It's all sort of happening at once, and the central channel, to go back to earlier comments about the Kundalini, it's allowing this free flowing, and it is coming from down below your feet. How many have read the Rainbow Bridge books by those two gentlemen? I've forgotten, Stephen and somebody. They took the Bailey material and they sort of expanded on it as far as building the Antakarana. Anyway, it's I think they called it the Earth Star. You have the monadic star and the Earth Star, and that is very similar to the Kundalini when the mother finally has played its part. And we should never be critical of the matter aspect because it allows us a medium through which to grow. And HPB said to one of her students, it's like Jacob's ladder. You're always stepping on the ladder, but as you go up the rungs of the rungs of the ladder become more ethereal, more transparent, until you're at a point where they practically don't exist. Okay, excellent. I'm going to go to the next slide. And so here we have the triangle. The question that has been asked, and all of you who have done triangle work know that the triangle has three different energies. And those three different energies can spawn three other additional triangles. So now you have 9 energies. And this happens because it's self-generated. And I'm going to give you an animation, it's very short, no music, but it'll give you a visual idea of that dynamic. All triangles emerge out of the infinitude of our inner being, our monad, if you please. And it's a difficult thing to grasp, but let's look at this image right here. You see a beautiful star at the very base of these 3 images. But those stars are made up of all the triangles above it. So if you imagine each one of those triangles that you see above the lowest star is a different level. And if we're presented with this 12 or 13 pointed star, it's because it not only relates to a wholeness, but it also relates to the 12 independent parts that come together to make that wholeness, where the sum of the parts is greater than the parts. And I love this image. It's not one of mine. Okay, here we have same image. We're repeating ourselves, but through repetition and looking at the same concepts from slightly different points of view, mentally and visually, revelation can occur. Okay, so you have large triangles, then you have intermediate sized triangles, and then you have small triangles. There is your hierarchy of triangles, as somebody said earlier, going up into infinity or going down into matter. And if we set this in motion, you'll also begin to see how it can relate to cycles, how there are certain cycles of triangles in the center of this composite that are revolving very slowly because they're outside of time and space or motion as we understand it, but the outer periphery, they're traveling fast. Well, that's where humanity is. It's in the outer periphery of these hierarchies of triangles, working its way back to the source. So use this next animation as a meditation. And also keep in mind Nikola Tesla, who believed that the numbers 3 and 9 held the key to the universe. he believed that these numbers, also number 6, were the universal mathematical language and that they were similar to the spiral movements in natural formations. So just because we're presenting a lot of this geometry with lots of angles, like the flower of life, they can be smoothed and they can take on a whole different feminine type of expression.
Tatsaviturvarenyam Bargo devasya dhimahi Yo yona prachodayat Om Bhurvasva Tatsaviturvarenyam Bargo devasya dhimahi Yo yona prachodayat Om Bhurvasva Tatsaviturvarenyam Bargo devasya dhimahi Yo yona prachodayat Om Bhurvasva Tatsaviturvarenyam.
This image is not only occultly, the previous one that we saw, very powerful, but it's poetry in motion. And we have to look at our lives as the creation of a poem, an occult, esoteric poem, full of psychic sensitivity, full of emotional fire, full of unconditional love. Because however difficult your circumstances, however many challenges you face, you're rewriting yourself and you're creating an epic poem. Now, the next image is going to show this triad of whether it's the lower triad or the upper triad, again, in motion, but you're going to see it electrically. And I would love to say that I created this, but I borrowed it from some electrical site on the internet. But what's interesting about this as you watch it in motion is that these 3 dynamic poles are radiating a very high frequency or powerful electrical and magnetic discharges. And all the outer part, like the blue, those are the lines of resistance that this triadic entity has inserted itself and is rearranging the atomic structure according to its plan, according to its higher level of development. And this may sound a little arcane, but we have to remember that DK says that you cannot fully develop the mental vehicle until you striate the mental substance in your auric field. Going back to the original first picture that I showed, where the mind can be inchoate, it can be disorganized. When you begin to organize it sequentially, what is happening is the personality ray, the soul ray, working in conjunction with their potency, is rearranging the substance in your lower vehicles. So as this turns, keep in mind that it's spiral, not linear, and it is dominating and it's causing the lesser substance to become striated. So use this. I may have this in the wrong order. We will see. It's interesting when Paramahansa Yogananda, under the stewardship of his guru in India, was finally granted through the incredible development of his master a slight vision of nirvana. In his record of that, in the autobiography of a yogi, he said, the cosmic motor. Now, yes, we can associate the motor with our cars, with all kinds of things that we operate in our home, but it is like the cosmic motor behind everything. It's Fohat. It's the power of electricity to drive everything in a certain direction. And historically, it's being driven in the right direction. And all we got to do, as Grandma used to say to me when I was cutting up, which was often, Sonny boy, you have to attach your wagon to a star. And she was very wise, and I never grasped what she meant. But all these outer constellations, they have plans for you. They're working through our sun. They're working through the sacred planets, and they're like motors drilling through the wasted material that's no longer needed and stimulating again the atoms of love to come alive and work their way back home. Okay, the next animation, there's a beautiful, would anybody like to read this quote by DK before we watch the animation?
Yes, we have a hand up. Hold on, let me get up there so I can see who.
Asha's.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Circulating their light from point to point of a rapidly moving triangle. By the time the third initiation is reached, a wondrous transformation has transpired. The outer sphere is palpitating with every color in the rainbow and is of wide radius. The streams of electrical energy circulating in it are so powerful that they are escaping beyond the periphery of the circle, resembling the rays of the sun. The 9 petals are fully unfolded, forming a gracious setting for the central jewel, and their orange hue is now of a gorgeous translucence, shot with many colors, that of the egoic ray predominating. The triangle at the base is now quickened and scintillating, and the 3 points are small blazing fires, shown to the eye of the clairvoyant as 7-fold whorls of light, circulating their light from point to point of a rapidly moving triangle.
Excellent, thank you. So take a deep breath, focus, and through the power of intention and the imagination, just feel into this next animation. I seem to have misplaced the animation. So in that case, we will have to present that at another presentation. But the final one will more than compensate for that, assuming
Duane, you can find it perhaps by going to that grid and looking at all your slides at once.
no. I'm coming up. So this particular animation, in my opinion, summarizes all of what we have discussed in such detail. And it starts out with the tetracty, only it shows the tetracties radiating. They are not static. Even if we give them numbers, even if we give them colors, we give them names, we apply the rays and all kinds of other connotations. They are all vibrating and they all interfacing at the same time, some more powerful than others. So let's take a deep breath, and you can find this in magnetic spectrum vibrations if you go into Facebook. Excellent. Now, we do have a minute or two for any comments or questions.
Okay, we got a
But
couple
we'll-
of them here. Oh,
Okay,
sorry,
no, go ahead.
Anne Veronica says the three magnet form a 0 point in the middle of funnel for energy to flow in.
Yes, for energy to flow in, you have to have a funnel. And that's the whole aspect of white magic in alchemy. You have to create confining walls, which is will cause most mystical students to panic and run out the doors to do the work. There has to be some type of, well, this is the symbology of the chalice. Inside the chalice, the greater work is done, but you have to be able to pull energies together and magnetically and electrically confine them. And this is one of the bases of physics in a lot of new work they're doing. Okay, any additional comments?
Yes, Jessica says, I come away from your presentations feeling a strong sense of upliftment and interconnected with the natural order of which we are all part. A science of love, beauty, and truth within electrical and vibrational fields flowing through all things.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jessica. That is so rich, so uplifting, because it is the natural order of things. And sometimes we mentally force things. Sometimes it's necessary. Often it's just a waste of energy. And it really is. It all alludes to the science of love. So thank you, Jessica.
Diana says the translucence of the central jewel allows to perceive the monadic presence of the I am that I am.
Excellent, Diana. Translucent. We have to look with translucent eyes. See not just around things, but through things. Become them. Don't observe them. Step inside them. That's what HPB said about symbols. You study them in the early stages as if there's something outside of you. But she says, imagine you're going to the inside of the symbol and you are the symbol looking out at creation. Excellent. Any additional comments?
A couple more. Sorry. Hi. Oops. Somebody just posted some really long ones. Heidi says, absolutely fantastic. Deep gratitude for your presentation.
Thank you, Heidi, and deep gratitude for your presence and the presence of everyone else.
Asha says, so can we be effortless and just be, or is there intense work on this journey?
You know, it's a paradox. We have to know when to assert. This is almost a direct quote from DK. We have to know when to assert ideas, insights, who we are lovingly, but at the same time, we have to also know it's that the goal is achieved by yielding. It's a paradox, and we have to know the difference. And the dance can be different every day, every hour of your existence. When do you need to assert your autonomy lovingly when you're being screwed over or people are taking advantage of you, and when to just let it pass because it's not important? And I can't tell you where that dance is, but each one of you have either already found it or are in the process of finding it. That's because you're going to be using rays 1, 3, 5, and 7, which are more dynamic and assertive, and the rays 2, 4, 6, which are more receptive, more feminine, but equally as powerful. Any additional comments?
Yes, we have several. Anna says, consciousness arises from the interaction of spirit and matter. So whichever of the 7 planes of spirit matter life is functioning on, the dynamics of consciousness operate in the perpetual space related to that plane, a different kind of space. Each such layer or plane of the stream of consciousness, called the auric egg, is emanated from a center or core, which itself is a child monad emanated from the superior, and so on upwards until we reach the atmic monad again, out of the heart of which all flows. Thus, each of the children monads aid in producing in its fullness the whole auric egg of a septenary being by pouring forth from within its heart the particular pranic essences belonging to itself as the monad on that plane.
Wow. Beautiful outline and so accurate and so true. Thank you, Anna. Thank you so much.
Susie says, enlightening. Thanks to the team for this continuing unfolding of wisdom presented in sight, full way.
Excellent, Susie. Thank you very much for your many comments. And as we're closing, I just want to point out that I may have pulled together this Zoom presentation, but I can assure everyone that the potency arises out of your focus on these different subjects. I cannot and never will take credit for that. This is what real group work is. Somebody may take the responsibility to get the ball rolling, to bring people together, but the group has its own life. And that life is far more powerful than any individual person, any symbol, any quote, however eloquent. And you, as a composite, make this up. You feed into it. You give back to it. You evolve it. So thank you all so much.
We got a couple more here. Let me see what they say.
That's good.
Anna says, thank you, Duane. Michael's giving the links for our online calendar. Asha says, I thought this was 2 hours long till 4. Well, we've been at it for 2 hours. We started at 10:15-ish. So, okay. That's all I've got in the comments at this
Awesome.
time.
Let your day be awesome every day. Thank you. Light and love.
And we'll post the videos and the recordings and everything shortly. So